All right, y'all, what's up? Let's go, man. March the 5th, 2025. Welcome to the channel. Stigmatism in My Soul. Gonna be publishing the podcast with Soul. Sean Xavier gonna be joining you. Myself, Sean Xavier gonna be seeing you. We do not wish to defame, slander, libel, or defame anybody as it relates to the content of this video. We do not wish to cause any harm to anybody. But we will be coming from publicly available court records, court documents. Welcome to the show. Please subscribe, share this video. Also, you could also listen to all of these videos. This is going to be video, I think, number 25. This is my 25th episode on this topic, the Cuffy Big Meech case. All of those are all on Spotify. The podcast was sold on Spotify, and I'm also on Instagram. The podcast was sold. So yesterday we ended off with Attorney Welby, cross-examining Jack Harvey. Now we're going to be coming from the redacted transcript, excerpt of Volume 2 of the Franks hearing, dated October 18, 2016, United States of America versus Dion Lamont Gatlin, also known as Cuffy. So this is Cuffy's paperwork. All of the paperwork, y'all be saying, yo, Sean, why don't you read Cuffy's paperwork? Why don't you read Cuffy's paperwork? All of this is Cuffy's paperwork. Everything that I've been reading has been the United States of America versus Cuffy. The case number is 4:14-CR-88 RWS. All right. So Jack Welby, the attorney for Gibbs, who's one of the defendants along with Cuff on this case, has been questioning Jack Harvey, and now they get to the point to where he's talking about hold on a second, let me make sure I got the right joint. Hold up. Hey, hold up. Hold on. Nope, this ain't the right thing. My bad. Here, go over here. I'm looking at the wrong thing, y'all. All right, I was looking at the wrong document. Okay, here we go. So he begins to question Jack Harvey about when he last debriefed Tammy Cowins, his 90-day debriefing before his retirement in 2011. She reaches out to him in 2013. And then they begin these series of phone calls and conversations starting in 2015. Okay? And what happens is the St. Louis DEA puts Tammy's name in the discovery, right? Discloses, puts her out there that she is a cooperating informant, and, you know, Cuffy's team learns of it. It becomes public information. It's in the discovery, and now she is upset. And she says to Jack Harvey, I wish I would have never gotten involved with the DEA. I wish I would have never started this. I wish I would have never even heard of the DEA. Because now she has safety concerns, and she is upset about that, and she's expressing that to Jack Harvey. And Jack Harvey is taking notes of all of this while she's telling him all of this. She also, Tammy Cowins also begins, this is when she really starts to lie and change up her story, right? In the initial affidavit, she's describing the agents she's working with, she's always using plural when she's referring to the Atlanta agents. The agents this, the agents that, agents. Now she starts talking, nah, I didn't mean agents, I meant just Keith Cromer. You understand? And then it's, she divulges to Jack Harvey that she's having this sexual relationship with Keith Cromer, I'm sorry. And, they go into a bunch of different things. They talk, the conversations between Jack Harvey and Tammy Cowins begin in March of 2015. I think specifically March 15th, March 18th, March 23rd, and April the 6th, right? And they start going through all of this stuff. They talk about the payments. She receives an $80,000 lump sum payment, right? That Jack Harvey, that's Luna, that Jack Harvey assumes is from the Terry White forfeiture case. But Luna, knock it off. But she is telling him, I don't know why I'm getting this money. I don't know why I'm getting this money. So they get into that. And then she comes out and says, I didn't do this for the money. I didn't do this for the money. So we're going to get into all of that. All right, so Jack Harvey starts off like he's asking Welby, the attorney Welby, starts off asking Jack Harvey about Tammy Cowins' reliability, right? And, how she doesn't have a criminal record, and she was a great CI in the Terry White case. Welby. So the statement that you gave of that was based on your knowledge at the time of your retirement, not where you sit today. This is in regards to Tammy Cowins. Yeah, it was based on my having, run her criminal history and my experience in dealing with her, finding her to be credible and reliable, very helpful to the case. Welby, you said then you later learned some news that you said was sad or disappointing or distressing in May of 2014. Harvey, yep. Excuse me. Welby. And just briefly, that would be that she was in a sexual relationship with a supervising agent. Jack Harvey, yes. And that she had received money that she doesn't know why she was paid. Jack Harvey. Well, the money, she said a lot of things about the money to me. I believe in her own mind she was not overpaid. She probably thinks she was underpaid considering the security concerns that she has, and how, she has said to me many times, I wish I never started any of this. I wish I had never even gone to Jack Harvey on the Terry White case. She wishes she never heard of the DEA. Because this is the time, once her cover is blown, right? And people know who she is and that she's the confidential informant, the confidential source, threats are starting to be made on her life. And then you started receiving calls from her mostly in March of 2015. He asked her about the money. He asked Jack Harvey about the money. So Welby asked Jack Harvey, did she ever tell you she got a check and she doesn't know what the check was for, or money, not necessarily a check? Harvey, she may have at some point. Welby, she was kept on as an informant, just so I'm clear, in order to make sure she received the award. So when Jack Harvey retired, Tammy Cowins had to be kept on as an informant in order to receive the award that he put her in for. So that's what his thinking was in terms of the money. So here is the attorney Welby asking Jack Harvey about what Tammy Cowins is telling Jack Harvey in these phone calls that start to take place in March of 2015, right? So he retires in 2011. She contacts him in February of 2013, right when Cuffy and them get busted. Then she goes dark. Now she reappears and she starts talking to him in March of 2015, over 2 years later. This is what Welby asked Jack Harvey. So near the top of the events, you see that you wrote that Tammy Cowins told you, Tammy Cowins, what hurts the most is that the document says I'm reliable from my prior filings. And Welby says, prior filings, am I reading it? Because this is all handwritten. Prior filings, am I reading your handwriting correctly? And then Jack Harvey clears it up and says, prior cooperating. So this is what Tammy Cowins says. What hurts the most is that the document says I'm reliable from prior cooperating. So what she's referencing is, I guess, the affidavit that was written detailing that she's a reliable source based upon her work in the Terry White case. Jack Harvey. She was hurt by the fact that it was being made known to other people that she had previously assisted the DEA. That upset her. That she was being described as having been previously an informant. I assume that was a reference to the work she did on the Terry White case. Then they talk about Keith Chrome and this other agent, Brett Johnson, giving her a phone and saying that she's going to be kept out of the discovery. Then, this is March 15th. Attorney Welby, turning your attention to page 7 near the top, where still it looks like more information on March the 15th. So right here we're dealing with at the very top. Tammy Cowins knows the Office of Professional Responsibility won't want to hear regarding St. Louis issues. Jack Harvey, yes. Then Welby asks him, in your notes at the bottom it says, they can't give you what you want to unring the bell. Jack Harvey, I said that to her, yes. What you meant is she can't undo what she had did? Is that what that meant? Jack Harvey, no. I meant they can't, they being the authorities in St. Louis, can't take back information that's already been released about her. I was being kind of pessimistic. Welby, so by unring the bell, you were saying the agents can't unring the bell as far as what they've done? Not that she can't unring the bell about what she's done. Which one is it? No, Jack Harvey, no. I was referring to the discovery that she was so upset about. Once they put her name in the discovery, St. Louis, it was done. She was no longer unknown. It was well known, publicly available. Tammy Cowins is the confidential source. Now let's deal with March 18th. These are some notes from a conversation you had with Tammy Cowins on March 18th, 2015. At the very bottom of the page, she describes something that she would never forget. Yeah, it was just that she was saying that this was kind of a rehash. This has nothing to do with St. Louis. Every once in a while, she would be talking about her current problems. She would go back and talk about her, just previous experience. And I think what that was she was shocked when she was summoned to a meeting, and she was just surprised that like every agent in the group was out there. That was very different from my dealings with her, which was all one agent or two agents or just me over the phone. And the first time they went out to this Stonecrest Mall, which is in Lithonia, east of Atlanta, I guess a whole lot of the agents from the group were there. And at that time, I think she was paid. And she was told that, in her words, that she could be put on the payroll. And then Keith had told her, don't talk to one particular agent in the group, a female agent. Then they talk about the $2,500 a month. So here, now she's saying that when she first met with Keith Cromer, she met with him and a bunch of agents were there. Then other times she says, well, it would only be him. And we all know that that's a no-no. Jack Harvey already set the tone with that anytime a DEA agent meets with an informant, it should at least always be two agents there. March 23rd. Brett Johnson is talking to her about what the assistant U.S. attorney is going to speak to her about, right? And then let's come on down. And then at the end, she say something? I'm having a hard time reading your handwriting there at the very last sentence. Jack Harvey. Yeah, that was, yes. What it says is she says, there was definitely never a time when any agent other than Keith Cromer got an overhear of any of my conversations with the defendants. The context for that was I had read the email she sent me where there were many references to Atlanta agents, plural. And so I wanted to, just make sure from her, was it more than one agent? It's just a thing where maybe the St. Louis agents would have thought that. But she said no. It was definitely only Keith. That she was only with Keith at the time of the phone call. So here's where her story starts to change and she begins to contradict herself. She says there was never any other time. There was definitely never a time when any agent other than Keith Cromer got an overhear of any of my conversations with the defendants. But then she wrote an email to Jack Harvey saying the agents, plural. So here's where she starts lying and getting with the bullshit. They talk about they're going back and forth with agents. Welby is really drilling Jack Harvey on the stand. Yo, she said agents in the email. Now she's saying agent here. Like, which one is it? You know what I'm saying? This is supposed to be a reliable informant. April 6th, 2015. Tammy Cowins. This is Attorney Welby. Directing your attention to page 20 and go sort of towards the top. This is the conversation from April 6th, 2015. Is that correct? Jack Harvey. Yes. Assistant U.S. Attorney, as before, MD, which is Drake, said that said, "This is a mess." Tammy Cowins or CS1 said, "I didn't do this for money, as was stated in the documents." Now, Tammy Cowins is saying, "I didn't do this for money." This is on page 66 of 74. This is a 74-page document. October 18, 2016, Frank's hearing, Volume B, redacted, transcript, excerpt from Volume 2. Okay. So Tammy Cowins now says, I didn't do this for money, right? So why did she do it? Good question. Was stated in, I didn't do this for money, as was stated in the documents. So somewhere in some documents prior to April 6, 2015, she stated that she didn't do this for the money, right? Now remember, out the gate with the Terry White case, that wasn't done for no money, right? We learned yesterday that she was told by an ex-con that she could get in trouble for the money laundering she was doing with Terry White. And that ex-con put her in touch with Jack Harvey. And Jack Harvey told her, well, you probably wouldn't even get in trouble for this, right? Yet she's not listed as a CS in the Terry White case. She's listed as a CI, cooperating individual, right? Remember, we talked about that yesterday, how a CS is someone who is providing information to the DEA for a fee. They learning, they watching, they ear hustling, and they're turning information over to government authorities. A cooperating individual, a CI, is somebody that's fucked up in the case too and is trying to get right, get themselves out of it. So now she's saying here she didn't do this for the money. Why is she doing it? Jack Welby rests. He has no more questions. Now Jack Harvey is, I keep calling him Jack Welby. Is that his name? I'm mixing him up with Jack Harvey. Hold on, let me get my man's name. If it's really Jack Welby. I might be right. Hold on. Let me see. Hold on. What's my man's name? Hold on, y'all. Stephen Welby. So Stephen Welby rests. He's the attorney for Gibbs. Now the government is going to redirect the examination Jack Harvey. They're going to redirect. So he steps up. This is the attorney for the government. Third of the way down the page, starting with I never. Jack Harvey. She is saying, I never met Fidel. U.S. Attorney. Okay. And 2 lines before that, she's talking about my call was listened to, not recorded. Jack Harvey. Yes. And farther down, just after I never met Fidel, what does she tell you about that? Page 67 of 74. Beneath I never met Fidel. Attorney. After I never met Fidel. Jack Harvey. Meech asked me to give Fidel's number to Cuff. U.S. Attorney. Okay, then let's go to page 22 where you were before when Keith Cromer told Brett on the phone in Tammy Cowins' presence, we need to keep her out of this. Okay? Jack Harvey, yes. U.S. Attorney. The next line is what? Jack Harvey. One key call from Cuff came as I was leaving movie with Keith, and I put Cuff on speaker, talking about Cuffy. U.S. Attorney. Okay, now I've got about 3 or 4 things I want to go through. Terry White was convicted of multiple 67. Terry White was convicted of multiple hold on, y'all. Got my pages mixed up. Multiple felonies, wasn't he? Yes. And CI, cooperating individual work by its very nature is secretive, correct? It should be, yes, Jack Harvey. Then they're going to say, well, U.S. Attorney, you're not going to tell the target a year after that you're about to try and incriminate him, fair to say? Jack Harvey, of course not. U.S. Attorney, I mean, that's just common sense. Jack Harvey, correct. So confidential informants lie and play roles when they are doing it, correct? Jack Harvey, yes, but I prefer to say play a role, yes. U.S. Attorney, all right, it's a ruse. Jack Harvey, yes. U.S. Attorney, okay, that's what they are supposed to do? Jack Harvey, yes. U.S. Attorney, otherwise they'd all be dead. Jack Harvey, yes. So this is the issue that Tammy Cowins has. This is page 65 of 74, right? Question. Can you read for me? And I think this is from, hold on a second, y'all. Yeah, this is another page from Welby that I skipped over. Stephen Welby to Jack Harvey. Can you read that for me? Tammy Cowins wrote and Jack Harvey. Tammy Cowins wrote an affidavit that this is CS1 telling me that she wrote an affidavit herself. I've never seen that affidavit. But she wrote an affidavit that there are errors in the St. Louis documents that she may send to all the attorneys in the case. M. Drake called back, who is the U.S. attorney from St. Louis, asked Tammy Cowins, don't send this to everyone. Tammy Cowins refused, is what she told me, and that she used the name of Keith Cromer in those documents. Stephen Welby, in the affidavit that she wrote, Jack Harvey, in the affidavit that she wrote, yes, Stephen Welby. And then can you read the very next sentence Tammy Cowins wrote? I promised, Jack Harvey. She says, I was promised my name wouldn't be exposed, etc. Brett misled me, etc. MD is the same U.S. attorney, as before. MD said this is a mess. I didn't do this for the money, as was stated in the documents. So this is when, after she's found out, she writes these affidavits. Remember, we spoke about that earlier in the case? And she starts sending them to everybody. This is what she's trying to do to, she's upset, right, that she's exposed. Her name's in the documents. St. Louis put her name in the discovery. Everybody knows who she is. She was told she would never be known. She was misled. And all the St. Louis documents are all wrong. Now she's going back on everything. I wasn't in this for the money. I wish I'd have never got involved with the DEA. I wish I would have never, did the Terry White case. Now she has second thoughts about everything she has done. But it's too late. You can't unring the bell, as Jack Harvey has told her. And let's talk about this payment. 68. Stephen Welby. And Tammy Cowins did tell you at some point in time that she thought she had got paid a lump sum of money that she didn't know why she got paid. Is that fair to say? Jack Harvey. Yes. Didn't know the specific reason for at least one particular payment. Yes. Stephen Welby. The large lump sum, the 80,000, Jack Harvey. Well, the large sums, I thought she knew, but I'm not sure if they were. What case? I thought it was the Terry White case. Okay, well, there was okay. That's all right. Then they talk about this other things going on. So that's where we at. Tomorrow, I got another video for y'all. I'm also going to do the government's response to Cuffy's motion to suppress the wiretaps. So I'll be doing a video on that. I appreciate y'all for coming through. Talk to y'all later. Peace.